Hey folks, how's it going? Dr. Spin, eclectic album reviews and general musical meanderings. Welcome to 2022. I've got a bunch of new music that I'm going to be setting up for you. Actually, so much music that I'm going to be breaking it down into two preview posts a week. I'm actually calling them appetizers because all these videos are going to be looking at albums that I've only seen for a couple of weeks. And these are going to be forming the brackets in February that I'm going to be using moving forward to decide the top 20 of 2022. We're already going to get started on that. So first up is Low's Hey What. Low's 13th album. And I've only been a fan of Low really for the last three. I didn't know them before then. It's kind of a funny story how I got into Low. But they made an immediate impact on me when I got into Ones and Sixes a few years ago. And then really they blew my mind when they released Double Negative a couple of years ago. Hey What is another step in that same direction. Low has been really incredibly adventurous in the last couple of albums with the way that they've been approaching the production on their songs. There's a very specific type of overblown, compressed distortion that you see on this album that they started playing with a little bit on the last one. It really makes a huge presence here. Of course, songwriting is at the core of what they do. They have amazing blend between the two voices, even though their voices are very distinct from one another, but they blend together in a really, really super compelling way. But the song forms are not standard. And certainly the kinds of sounds they're getting are at times soothing and beautiful and extremely challenging and grating. So you got to kind of buckle in for that. But I really feel like that this album is really gratifying and it's a beautiful and also very ugly album at the same time. Okay, next up is Edward Blankman's Cape Cod Cottage. And Edward Blankman was a dentist in the 1970s. Who on the side wrote elegant minimalist jazz, and he had, his wife had passed on, and he made all these recordings and hid them in his attic. And recently those tapes were found, and these tapes were brought out, and this was published. Now this is a great story, but it's actually fiction because this album is actually by Brendan Eder and the Brendan Eder Ensemble. And this is a big digression stylistically from his previous album, To Mixer's Time, which is a huge piece of the puzzle for me last year. What Brendan Eder has done here that's really innovative, really fascinating to me, is he's written this story about Edward Blankman. And it's a very vivid and very compelling story, and written music around this character. The backstory that surrounds this character of Edward Blankman is really what makes this album sell to me. Because as good as this album is on its own, it's really much richer by this created character. And I feel like if you ask Brendan Eder what Edward Blankman would do on a rainy December afternoon, he could tell you. I mean, this is a very detailed idea about who Edward Blankman was and what motivated him. And that's what fuels this music. And it's a really great approach that I don't see happen very often. And it makes this album a lot richer due to that concept that holds it together. Okay, next up is Ten Kobanashi. Ten is a traditional Japanese music ensemble. And I say traditional with a little bit of like safety quotes around it because they're playing in a very traditional Japanese style. But it's not fully traditional. It's not in the tradition. It's inspired by the tradition. You're looking at like a shamisen player and some percussionists and some flute, very minimalist overall, but really like captures this seething intensity that happens in traditional Japanese kind of folk music. Now, many of these songs are structured theoretically in the same way that Japanese music was, really emphasizing pentatonic scales and not harmony, but kind of counterpoint. Japanese music was never really intended for instruments to play on top of each other too much. It doesn't follow standard harmony. It's more like melodic lines with accompaniment. But there are some songs in here I think that are interesting because they get into some chromaticism, get into songwriting, still playing in the same kind of Japanese style and orchestration. So even though it's in a traditional style, they're still playing with different musical ideas and different musical structures. And that really gives this album a lot more variety than you'd think. Okay, and finally, it's Vanishing Twins, Ookii Gekko. Ookii Gekko is a kind of a moody jazz, funk, Afrobeat album. Definitely kind of in a more of a Stereolab vein than, straight ahead funk. Also kind of sits at the crossroads of like movie soundtracks and that kind of moody thing, Ennio Morricone style, David Lynch style music, and kind of just kind of space rock. Now, I think there's a lot of great playing on Ookii Gekko, and there's a lot of things about it that are entertaining, lots of great soloing, and lots of really interesting musical ideas that give it a depth and some richness that kind of wouldn't be present in other albums of this type. The downside that I see of Ookii Gekko, to a degree, is that it kind of has a sense that it meanders a little bit. And that's sort of indicative of this style of music, too. It's meant to kind of unfold and unspool as you listen to it with the solos and people playing these little polyrhythmic patterns over it and kind of psychedelic text and lyrics. And that, again, is part of the style of this music, I think. So if you're a fan of that kind of open-ended jazz rock, this would be right up your alley. These are the 4 I got through this week. If you like these videos, please like and subscribe. Share it out with your friends. Also follow me over on Spotify. I'm starting a new list for 2022, so you guys can check that out. I'll be releasing another one of these videos later on this week. So until then, I'll catch you guys on the flip side.